So the next portion of the exchange this morning or this evening, wherever you are, is on the assault on science. Indeed, we already introduced that. All our speakers have given from different perspective, different lenses, what we are all seeing appearing. So the in my initial preliminary presentation, I already talked about the systemic stress, so the pressure that is there. We had a lot of examples of this. The central question I've shared earlier was how can societies build resilient institutions? So we have concrete example like the library John was talking about, or even application through the keywords as but we also have the challenges. Fernando talked about the butterfly, the struggling of this species right now because of policies and the administrative decision. That's an example. So we'll dive into the workshop. So that was the preliminary minutes that were reserved for all the things, but typically it should be finishing in an hour or less. It's no more like 75 minutes. Think of it as a 60 minutes. So we'll crunch, and I'll try to save already on my intro. Then we'll have Walter giving us more insights as he told us on the mapping and the threats and vulnerabilities. We'll discuss designing resilient infrastructure. John and Claire will be able to share more of their ideas and solutions. And then we'll talk about building trust, especially looking at building coalitions. And the idea, the end result should be we need to convert the reflections and the analysis into action. So that's essentially the core of the outcomes. Not necessarily finalizing anything, but at least setting the foundation, as I said earlier. It's coming from months of reflection from the science policy group and even on politics in previous gathering. There was definition of 7 work streams. They are listed here. I will not go through them. I just said that I wanted to crush a bit my portion. The important is they have been summarized into 3 layers: layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. Um, the idea behind that is to have them, and I'll talk about it in the next few minutes, but I want to start on one of the things that have been emphasized in the last few weeks in 2 months, I would say, is we're not only in front of an assault on science. It's not just, I would say, separate battles. It's really like some sort of there's some sort of cohesion between these actions. It's looking more and more like an inquisition. Indeed, in the US, you have heard about Project 2025. In other parts of the world, in other countries, you have also similar approach that are applied. So an inquisition here, it's no more like politics as usual, as you're right. It's written here. It's not like just another way for a party to win against another party. No, it's beyond that. We're beyond that. It's almost theological or ideological. So there is a framing behind these actions. The glyphosate example, Fernando, you came up with, is part of the actions on whatever relates to the climate denial, reducing EPA capacities, and also it's built in. It's not just to help one single vendor of pesticide. Um, and by the way, I felt your example was good because I have Asclepiads in my backyard because of Monarch, and they're coming to my home. I built some sort of safe house for them. The reason is because of the this inquisition. You know, inquisition is not just a cohesive action. It's not just ideological. It's also persecution, and persecution comes with impacts on the people and also impacts on the environment. So the butterflies are suffering some sort of persecution right now. So to build resilient infrastructure, we need to provide this safe haven, this safe house, this safe space for the actors. whether they're persons, whether they're institutions, whether it's the climate or the environment itself. So that's something different than just reacting to an assault. You need to protect the people that are there. So that's essentially something that needs to be dealt with and reflected when we're finding solutions. And Jeffrey, don't hesitate to jump in discussing in the Inquisition lens. You were behind this reflection that has been made in the last few months, and adding to the evaluation of it. There are four features of this Inquisition lens. So there is an asymmetry of power. Indeed, we see governmental power is used sometimes to activate that, but it can be also just pure money and actors which have the means. But definitely there is an asymmetry. There are people that have less means and others which have a lot of means, and definitely there is this capacity to do that. So the second point is what I mentioned, so persecution. But it's not any persecution. It's a moralized persecution. It's correct to attack the heretics, those who are not thinking like you. Persecuting them is okay from the persecutor's standpoint, indeed, but there is some sort of moral acceptation in a group to persecute the others. One of the things we've discussed also, and that was part of the solution John and Claire discussed earlier, and even what Manolis has taught at the beginning. So the control of knowledge institutions. So knowledge is key in an inquisition. You need to control it to divert it towards what you want to be happening. And then the end result would be some sort of doctrinal purity. So everybody will be like-minded, thinking according to this powerful group that are above. So that's it for Jeffrey. I told you can jump in. So go ahead if you want to add something to this, and then we'll jump to the others.
Just to provide some context, your elaboration of the idea of Inquisition in these four items is very good. But the previous presentations this morning, whether we're talking about a library or Walter's presentation of the assault on public health, sort of assume, if you will, politics or public discourse as usual. And what brought me to the idea of Inquisition was the idea that in the United States especially, but also, say, in Germany with the rise of the conservative right, it was not politics as usual. It was the ascension of power with people that had a desire to control all other centers of knowledge to enhance their power. And that involved misinformation, distorted information, and adverse communications to demoralize people and destroy trust. And the underlying motive was really accrual of power. That's the only way to understand the decimation of the CDC and the NIH and its continued chaos. So if we confine ourselves to collecting knowledge that will give policymakers rational decision-making, optimization of human needs power, we're buying into a framework which says this is politics as usual. And I could not think of another framework that was alternative to that other than what Galileo faced in the 1600s. So Inquisition is merely a symbol that this is not politics as usual anymore. And contributing to a optimization dialogue is not the problem. The problem is how do we get out from under the rock of oppression? And that's the background. And I think these 4 points really elaborate how the perspective needs to pay attention to these while presenting, if you will, our evidence about reality. Thank you.
Yes, it's absolutely right. In fact, each threat right now, assault on science, take individually looks like, they might look individually like politics as usual, but it's the set, the aggregation of all this that is the Inquisition, because it's part of a structured way to advance whatever doctrine is advanced. Indeed, it's the same thing on the other side, on the solution side, and I just want to add that to what you said. If we look at individual solution, they look like an individual solution as usual. Let's say it like this. But if they're part of a bigger plan that is able to address these four items, so yes, the library alone cannot do anything if it's not part of something else. Yes, having a threat mapping, which is more efficient, dealing with the identifying vulnerability is not by itself sufficient. But all these tools add up to some system that could be created that would include what I was referring to as the safe houses or the safe haven, to protect these actors that try to do the things for the proper evidence-based and science-based solution. You need that safe haven as well, and you need to have a coalition that will provide structure. So that's the same thing. You understand? The issue on the threat side is we should not consider them individually because they look like politics as usual, and that's what they want us to think. It's just a single impact. We're touching on the monarch. It's just the monarch, but no, it might be, as we've seen on the chat, it might be the canary in the mine that will explode in so many other impacts with pollinizer and others. Same thing for the evidence-based and the science related to policies. But if we just look at one thing at a time, but it's a solution that would be overarching that needs to be found. But at the same time, each and every individual solution are part of what allows that to scale. Okay, so let's come back. So thank you for the comment. And I just wanted to make sure that all our guests are part of this and understand that. Those who will be talking a bit further, but also every one of you in this virtual room, you can come with ideas and solutions. We'll go back into the discussions after that, but I just wanted to let you know that we had kind of three big, and I'll let the link in the three big, I would say, examples that we can not necessarily discuss about, but we can refer to if need be. So definitely one of which was the resurgence of measles that is caused by anti-vaxxers, a disease that was under control mostly, not fully, but mostly, and that went into uncontrolled territories in some areas already. We also have, and you can have seen that in the New York Times, the link, I will share it in the chat as soon as I'm able to multitask, which I'm not super good at, but anyway, I'll try to. So there was a big article in the New York Times that was explaining all the Trump's administration assault on scientific research. So if it cannot be called assault on science, as we've said since last year, it's definitely the lingo that the New York Times is also using. And by the way, this resurgence of measles was touched on by the Council of Foreign Relations. So even if a group like this, which is very far from the medical science, sees that happening, we should, as scientific, and many of us in this virtual table are in the medical science, touching on bio and medical science. So people outside of this are seeing that as a more global threat. So we should also take care of that. And then this example, Fernando, you will be able to add to it sooner, or you can also jump in right away if you want to the example. I just want to share that this is all tied to the 7 work stream and 3 layers I was mentioning. And the 3 layers are also things that we'll be discussing. So the layer 1, the system analysis, is really the threat mapping, and I'll invite Walter when you'll be ready just to add to your point right after this. Then we'll discuss the resilient infrastructure, the resilient building resilience, and I feel the library and the evidence-based, the keywords solution, all this add up to a resilient infrastructure on the knowledge side. And then we'll talk about social capacity. Coalition here is definitely the keyword. So coordination and building a backbone. So Fernando, I don't know if you want to add on the monarch butterfly. You told us that you would like, and I don't want necessarily us to discuss about the two others. We all know what have happened uh, in the last 16, 17 months in the US. I want you to consider that not like politics as usual, but really part of something that has a bigger essence. And I'm saying bigger here, not bigger in the US. It has impact abroad. The monarch is an example. It has impact from Canada to Mexico for some pollinizer more, but it's definitely an international impact. And the measles, same thing. We have issues in many countries around the world. In the US, indeed, there are some resurgence there, but there are resurgences in many countries. You can see that in the foreign relation piece, and I'll put them. And Fernando, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing to add up to what you said, that
Yes.
would be a good time.
Thank you very much. I think it's very appropriate. First of all, I would like to say that it is a very clear, the monarch butterfly, it's a very clear example of sovereignty and country and borders. At a given moment, 100% of the population is in the United States and Canada, and at a given moment, it is in Mexico. Within our own sovereignty, we could have an international resource collapse. So either we unite and work collectively, or it's likely that we will fail. Second point is, who is to do it? It is us. It is the social society. We cannot wait anymore for governments to do it. And in particular, I would like to share a proposal in which on politics, and this seminar with all these brilliant ideas could, if agreed, and if there's no objection, put together a letter to the CEO of Bayer and to the CEO of Monsanto, expressing our positions and asking for a meeting. And let's confront them. And not only sending a letter, which already is something is better than nothing, but I think that the invitation of a scientific group for a discussion that could lead to something like, with all your science, why don't you develop an herbicide that doesn't that supports your profit in the corn, but that doesn't kill the rest of the plants, or a new product, let's not call it herbicide. In any case, what the point is I think this is a very appropriate civil society group, and we cannot be attacked on science and do nothing. My proposal then is, and if Adam Finkel, my good friend for many years, would agree, for us two together to put a potential written idea, and we can take it from there. Check.
This is an awesome idea and part of this structure of capacity building. So thank you for sharing that. And all those that wants to add them or others, just add it on in the chat. By the way, in the chat, I've added the link to the three cases. In fact, I don't have a link for your talk, Fernando, but if you want to share something, you can put whatever link you add on that's the third case you just talked about, and even the suggestion you made. So that's part of this. We'll jump back into the three, just trying to find my screen, which is here. And I'll invite Walter just to come back and talk about the threat mapping going just beyond, as you suggested earlier. That's what we call the layer one. So the analysis part that we need to have built in our stuff. So Walter, you are ready? Okay, go ahead. You can go ahead. Okay.
Yes, I'm trying to share my presentation. I should, and then let me put the presentation on. Can you see it?
Walter, we're seeing the Zoom screen that usually starts the meeting.
Other screen, yeah.
Yes. It might be another window in your.
You'll have to share another window.
Yeah, can I just try again?
Yes,
Let's check it this way.
that looks
Uh,
right.
That's better. That's talking about removing fluoride from public drinking water. That's it.
Thank you very much. So essentially, the attack on science is happening everywhere, but the United States are already, as you said, paying a price because removing fluoride from public drinking water may lead to millions more cavities in US children, as estimated by a study. As you already mentioned, there is the case of measles, which was eliminated in the United States in 2003, and now there are thousands of cases. Look at what's happening in 2026 in comparison with 2025 that already had an incredible amount of cases erupted. But it's the entire future of American public health that is at risk. And essentially, this is because the government is destroying, not only attacking science. And the destruction that Kennedy has wrote in 1 year, as Lancet said, might take generation to repair, and there is little hope for use health and science while you remain at helm. So what we do? What do we need? We need universities that defend academic freedom. We need governments that value independent scientific advice. We need media that distinguish evidence from misinformation. And we need citizens who understand that science is not an ideology, but a method for discovering reality. Because democracies flourish when citizens have access to reliable knowledge, when institutions are independent, and when public decisions are grounded in evidence as well as values. So as you said, Stefan, we are now in my presentation focusing on the first item of this very good list, threat mapping and institutional vulnerability. And my proposal is to follow a similar approach, not on the content, but on the methods that we used in Europe in the last 15 years. I started when I was president of the Italian National Institute of Health, a program called To Reach, born to identify the European healthcare common challenges and organizational needs, and to propose possible solutions to improve health system performance and to identify the most effective ways to organize, manage, finance, and deliver high quality, sustainable, and equitable care to our citizens. I want to underline that the To Reach action was not a research project, was a coordination and support action, focusing on setting out clearly what needs to be done in terms, of course, the content was on health services and system research agenda. And I was able to collect 28 partners from 20 countries, not only European, but including also Israel, the United States, Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and Canada. And we have been working to develop a strategic research agenda, identifying new solutions able to respond to the rising challenges, and understanding and predicting whether such solution can be implemented and transferred effectively in other settings. The program has been run for 5 years, has been preparing another partnership, which I will be describing in a minute, and has been beneficial to at least 3 perspectives. A policy perspective, by helping decision makers to take the right decisions. Remember, the partners were governments and research institutions, in particularly funding research institutions in the 20 countries that I mentioned. A funding perspective in order to align limited resources and avoid duplication, and a scientific perspective as it can help the European Commission, the member states, and the researchers to best incorporate this delivery of care element into their translational research design. And the program was so successful that the evolution was to become a partnership. A partnership means that the governments funded together with the funding from the European Commission. And the program of this partnership, the Healthcare System Partnership, was started in January 2023 for the duration of 7 years with 63 partners from 23 member states and Horizon Europe associated countries, including Switzerland and UK from 2024, and also 9 regions, with a budget of 300 million euros. And I was able to convince the Italian government to put 50 million, so the Italian government is coordinating this, and the entities considered as eligible to receive funding were the one listed in this slide, so Research Institute, Health and Care Organization, University and Higher Education Establishment, etc. So the program is running, and what I would like to propose for our actions on a different scale is the THCS approach, which is we have a gap in the reactions to fight and to tackle the attack on science. So the first is filling this knowledge gap. The second is to help all of us in different settings to implement and transfer the knowledge that we have gathered together with this kind of collaboration, and of course, boosting the reactions to the attack on science to provide the people-centered solutions. In details, define the problem and the missing knowledge means to understand what kind of person, population groups, stakeholders, points of view and needs, sectors involved, outcomes for dimensions, key research questions. Learn from this kind of activities that we have, and learning what, why, and essentially how to do, so how to fill the knowledge gaps in the implementation process and the implementation research. This kind of methodology could help us to entail and to understand what does the transformation entail. So we will be able to identify the problems, the needs, and the possible solutions. We will be able to understand what kind of leadership, what kind of vision and clear direction for change we would need. And of course, also from the political, economical point of view, to understand what kind of political will, what kind of window of opportunity, what kind of stakeholders to be included, what kind of political actors, to driving reactions and transformation and creating the right conditions and supporting environments for change, both top-down and bottom-up initiatives. Because reacting to the attack on science and driving transformation maybe in some cases need some technical evidence, in other cases knowledge brokering, in other cases identifying resources both from the financial and the human point of view, in other cases understanding what kind of stakeholders have to be involved, in other cases supporting change in management, try the stakeholder analysis, implementation, and monitoring. In some cases, to improve our communication. In some other cases, improve our training and capacity building. If you go to the website of the partnership, you find these three pillars. So, of course, the partners that are the protagonists of the actions, the strategic research agenda, that, of course, is the scientific guidance to this. But I would like to underline the importance that I propose for these initiatives of the Unpolitics of to creating our own knowledge hub, which means to create a facility in which also with the contribution of the people who are participating in this network, we can produce this kind of experience to be shared, knowledge to be brokered, and essentially activities to be done together. In conclusion, this approach can be an important instrument in our action to defend science, can provide a new and different perspective that tends to reduce complexity in favor of the empowerment. And of course, looking at the different situations and conditions around the world. I mean, the attacks is universal, but the different level of development is, of course, must be taken into consideration. There may not be a one-size-fits-all solutions for monitoring, managing, and stimulating the adoption of solutions. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Walter. Yes, there is no one-size-fits-all, but we need many solutions. That's awesome. I really like your idea to have the THCS version of the knowledge for popping up from the Unpolitics group. That's awesome. Fernando, you wanted to add something or ask a question or whatever?
Very briefly, I celebrate the articulation of Walter, and I think this THCS is a very useful tool, especially because when we discuss the monarch, we're not only discussing biology of a species, but the health issue, to which he is evidently an expert, and glyphosates have a big debate about it. Check.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. This is a good example as well. Okay, thank you. So anyway, if you have other questions, comments, don't hesitate. This is the workshop part. It's not just a conference type, so don't hesitate to add anytime. We'll switch to John and Claire's library. But first, yes, Jeffrey, you wanted to add something? So go ahead.
Yes, again, I congratulate Walter on this effort. It's fantastic and obviously very constructive.
Absolutely.
I would point out, though, that what he talks about in terms of leadership and perspective for this, the European Union, broadly looked at, has fertile ground for such ideas because generally the governments have been committed wholeheartedly to having healthcare as a basic fundamental requirement to serve their citizens. And I would point out that democracy is not the only political system that does that. I would look at Singapore, where an authoritarian government has been exquisitely successful at universal medical care. But on the other hand, I think it's important to point out that the United States, for instance, is not warmly receptive to Walter's ideas because our healthcare system, irregardless of political party, has been captured by capitalist market factors, if not total influence, and the residual racism of not paying attention to the needs of disparity communities. And I think the actions of the Trump administration have only highlighted the long-term trends, which would sabotage Walter's excellent paradigm because of the needs of racial discrimination and ethnic discrimination.
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Walter, or just add your insights, or no, just
No, I want to thank all our colleagues for these comments. I very much appreciate.
Okay, great. Thanks as well, Jeffrey. Thanks, Walter. Indeed. Alan, you want to add something?
So just two comments. A long time ago, I'm a physicist by training. A long time ago, the American Physical Society invited Newt Gingrich to give a talk, or paid him to give a talk to the American Physical Society. And Newt Gingrich, obviously, Speaker of the House, consummate politician, he was asked, how come physics is not getting funded or getting attention? So he said, very bluntly, you're brilliant people, but you act individually. Okay. And the way Washington works is not by brilliant people saying brilliant things. The way Washington works is by people of a rather medium talent, forming associations and buying lobbyists, having lobbyists that lobby the federal government and Congress. And he said, for example, and this struck me, this is a long time ago, he said, one of the most successful group that lobbies Congress are the farmers. And they're so good that the farm aid bills, for a long time have paid farmers to not grow things. Okay. The argument is, maybe price support or whatever. If you produce too much milk, the price of milk will go down. So subsidize the farmers to not do things. He said, this is crazy that a country will pay people to not do things. So the lesson to you physicists is you should hire lobbyists. If you're trying to convince Congress just on your own, then you're not using the best tools available in the United States system. So I just offer that as an observation that maybe, it's not just depend on the brilliant people themselves, but also figure out how to include people who professionally lobby,
Yes,
Congress.
there are other angles to look at because, yes, it's not a straight. Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you, Ilan, for this.
Thank you.
John and Claire, I want to add you to the mix so you can do that, talking about both the library and the keyword and evidence-based for policies. Either we do it as a discussion or you have other slides you want to present. Just let me know what you would prefer to do in this second layer of the, as I showed earlier. So that is, we're at this level right now. So an example of resilient infrastructure, which you wanted to, and it's also the time to invite other people to join in with ideas and solutions according to what you all already have presented. But going further is the next step where we are. So whatever you see you would like to do, like
Yeah,
straight
I don't
exchange
have
or presenting.
I don't have any additional slides. I don't know, Claire,
Okay.
yeah. But there was, one thing that I just wanted to kind of expand upon that you can't say everything in 5 minutes.
Yes.
And I think it's an important framing for this whole discussion, right? I mean, I guess part of what we're doing, our main idea is, right, there's lots and lots of evidence for all these policy relevant questions out there. But the real challenge is how to get people to pay attention to it, right? And how to get people to act on it. And so parallel to that is what is a library, right? And I've been a librarian for 26 years now, a second career, right? But what is a library? And a library isn't a little free library, right? Those things we see at the side of the road, on the sidewalks, that's not a library. That's a neighborhood book exchange. The reason it's not a library is because there's no intentionality, right? There's no human thought behind what's in there. It's just what people want to get rid of, and hopefully somebody else will find use for it. But those little free libraries, those neighborhood book exchanges, they're not libraries. There's a definite intentionality to what a library is, right? So like I said, I've been a librarian for 26 years, and the subjects that I've kind of been the liaison librarian for at York have been, physics, math, all those things, but in particular currently kind of engineering and computer science and earth and space science. So when I build the collection of resources for those to support research and teaching in those subject areas, it's intentional, right? It's not random. There's a bazillion things out there. I don't bring them all into the library. I bring the ones in that I think are the most relevant, the most useful, and of hopefully the highest quality, right? So books, journals, databases, all of those kinds of things. And the other thing a library does, apart from that intentional collection building, is there's also what we refer to in the library biz as kind of the information literacy side of things. And that's helping our users use and understand the things that we've collected, the information that we've collected, and the other information that's out there that's, outside the collection, right? So in other words, there's, if you're an engineer, there's a universe of information. And how do you understand the social context, the social and economic and environmental and kind of ecosystem context of all of that information? And how do you integrate that to what you're what you're doing, right? And so when I'm in an engineering classroom, what do? Right? I teach the students how to, justify their design decisions, right? They currently need to when they're working on a design project, they need to justify to the people that are marking that project. In the future, they will need to justify their design decisions to a boss. How do they gather and present that information? What information is the most relevant? What information is the most valuable? All of those things, how to understand where it came from, if there's biases in that information. That's all the kinds of things that we do as librarians working in libraries, right? And so this idea that a library is neutral is completely false, right? Libraries and librarians aren't neutral. everything that we do in our jobs, in the library, in building that collection, and in providing the services that support that collection is intentional, right? It's not random or passive, right? It's very intentional. It's not neutral. And I think you see that a lot, in kind of the public, most visibly now kind of in the public library world, but that's also true in the academic library world. And so while we're, again, strong supporters of intellectual freedom, for example, I don't add creationist material to the Earth Science collection. That's not a sense of intellectual freedom that someone could somehow make me do that, right? That's 100% not what we mean by intellectual freedom, right? Yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to say about, what is a library, and how does it work, and what is kind of the core, again, different kinds of libraries with different kinds of audiences and different kinds of communities are going to have kind of different core philosophies. But again, that core philosophy isn't random. It's not neutral. There's a strong intentionality around that.
Yes, absolutely. And you add a couple of keywords, to use your term, Claire, like education and school. So I think library and education are close by. And I would add another keyword on my side. I think library is also some sort of a safe house I was referring to, but for information. So that's normal that you will not have a kind of promoted information that's absolutely wrong. We're talking about creationism or whatever, flat earther stuff. So definitely you will not push for that, because it's this purpose of the library to be a space where you'll know that's what you think, and that's important that we kind of promote that the information that you'll get there is right. And I'm saying you're thinking because one of the big proponents on the other side of the story is a group that is now calling itself the War on Science since a couple of years. And the War on Science people, I'm super generalizing here, but there are names you can, and I will not name them. They are calling for the right to say anything according to science. Exactly, in fact, in the direction you mentioned. So pushing anti-vaxxer stuff, pushing creationism stuff, pushing whatever. So it's not like if we're in a void talking about library here. This tool of a purposeful, correctly set library is important, because if it's not done, these other groups, war on science type, and I'm saying war, it's not assault here. They're talking really a war. They're pushing wars in many fronts anyway. So I'm talking, that's why I'm separating them. They will make their own library, and that's what they're working on right now. And that's why personally I think it's absolutely important that there is something like a purposeful library on the good side. Claire, I just as I said, I don't want to put you on a spot, but it could be the time to add to what you suggested earlier and you presented as well.
Yeah, well, firstly, I think the action item that goes with what we just discussed is determining how we both find and review sources. Working with the World Health Network, if I make something, I have to send it off to review, but that's still a little bit more reactionary. Whereas in sorting your library, you also want to be finding the diversity of trusted sources. So we have to have a transparent way to not miss anything that should be there, and also not put anything in there that shouldn't be. The other point was that John was discussing earlier, having the positive information and having the ability to respond to the negative information, being able to explain evidence for something, and also being able to rebut misinformation. And I think that's an important thing for the library when we consider what questions does this source ask. It's one, what does this tell us about, so that we can make better decisions and we can advocate for better decisions, but also to what threats does this respond to, or what it might be an honest question somebody has and we say, oh, this is exactly the source to answer that, or it might be a piece of misinformation. And discussing in the misinformation team time the past couple of days, I remember somebody saying, well, I want to focus more on literacy because I don't want to be the one saying what truth is. So we have to be sure that we have, this is what that tool is for. We're finding a way to show that the truth is at least approximately this. It's not going to be perfect in science, but having a tool that we can use to say, when we're rebutting mis or disinformation, this truly is essentially what the truth is. This is what the science demonstrates. Whether we're having a debate where we actively rebut that information, or if we're having a discussion where we're redirecting somebody who's been misled, that's what this library can also be used for, is for having a very quick reference for what sources respond to what threats.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And it's useful on many fronts, I would say, because, for example, for local public health officers, which are in smaller community, whoops, I've lost you, Claire. Don't know where it's anyway. Claire, I'm just responding to you, just trying to, okay, good. So for local public health people, sometimes if they cannot rely on, I would say, the higher level authorities, because they're saying whatever sometimes, and we see that appearing much times. So they would need another source of reliable information to rely on and say, my decision in my local community was to allow for whatever, respirators to be used here and there. You understand? So they need something. They could not by themselves alone saying that. That's why I was referring to the library as a safe space. This is a safe space, not a physical safe space necessarily, but a safe space for their capacity to do things, even at the local level. So, and what you were saying is absolutely right. So they need, and that's why it needs to be done the correct way. So proper sources indeed, but I liked also your approach with the keywords. So they need to be able to find it in a fast way, clearly, clear and sound. It cannot be complicated for these persons in the local sector, because they don't have necessarily the resources, the time, the means to put someone full-time to dive into all this material. So that's kind of I would call that a library plus. So it's another layer. So kind of filtered information because they've passed the test of evidence-based, science-based, whatever it's done before, and there it's also done in a way that it's simple and clear to use, especially by the local actors, which needs it a lot right now, all around the world, not just in the US. It's everywhere right now that they need things like that. A kind of a second source, an independent source that is not tied to political views or political interests. It needs to be independent. That's absolutely necessary as well. Anyway, that's this other type of safe space. So thank you for your comment. So I don't know if anyone has comments or ideas or things to share on that front. Anyway, as I said earlier,
may I say something? Can you hear
yes,
me?
indeed.
Just sorry, I have problems with my camera.
Okay, so you can say it
yes,
just out loud. You're on the
For me, the main problem in science in this case is the problem of social constructivism, knowledge as the social construct. And this is a fundamental challenge for social sciences, because if we assume that knowledge is a social construct and social categories are social constructs, then we have a deep ontological and epistemological problem, because, for instance, any social category is an intersubjective social construct. So it opens up a very broad area of discussion. It's becoming even more sophisticated and more intricate when we consider artificial intelligence. But let me put it away, just a classical discussion between social constructivism, postmodernism, and neo-positivism and positivism. Because what is truth? If somebody says that truth is a social construct, especially in reference to the social categories. So for me, this is the most challenging problem of social science. But not only, I'll put away, deep discussion about physics and postmodern, Derrida, etc., etc. But just for me, this is the main challenge when I talk about something objective, subjective, intersubjective. Of course, I could talk more. Sorry, I don't know what has happened to my camera. Maybe this, and I don't want to restart it. So okay, so that's all on my
But it
part.
was definitely a pertinent comment. It's a social thing as well, and we need to consider that in the mix. Absolutely right. Sheila, you want to add something?
Just a couple points. First of all, in the United States, one of the serious issues is that the US government for many years was the authoritative source of data. And
Yes.
many of those data sources are being compromised or removed. And one of the things that On Politics might want to consider is finding partners to house those data, finding the databases that still exist either in scholars' hands or in our international partners' hands, and finding a repository for the data so they are not lost. And some of the potential partnerships might be AAAS, for example, in the United States is working on a variety of lobbying efforts, if you will. But also the Union of Concerned Scientists, for those of you who are familiar with that organization, they are also looking at ways to influence Congress so that science doesn't die. But also the national academies, and there are a whole lot of them, and they are all interested in this. And there are other organizations around the world that would also who also represent science and might be interested in participating with us in not only discussing this issue, but finding places, safe places for data to reside. Just a couple thoughts.
Really like your point, Sheila. It's right in a good segue to where we were. So kind of, and we'll talk about that probably more in the breakout rooms afterwards, because we're getting towards the end of the group workshop, and I want to let space for the team work after that, which is in maybe 5-10 minutes. And we'll just open on that. But what you mentioned is exactly in this direction. So when we want to build social capacity, we cannot do that as an individual group, whether it's On Politics or other. It needs to be in collaboration. You mentioned the Union of Concerned Scientists and others that are already thinking about kind of recuperating or saving data. We're seeing, we've heard about some of the NOAA that has kind of dismantled a portion of the measurement on the ocean level right now. Some satellites that follows climate measurement are also to be dismantled, if not already starting to. So this data that they were collecting will also disappear soon. So it needs to be, but to do that, it's not just a few person. It needs a structured multi-parties. It needs a coalition, or if not, as it said here, coalitions with an S. So many coalitions. That will be the only way to scale to a level that will follow and be able to support. And you said it, anyway, that's a word I like, as you know. So it will be some sort of a safe haven for the data themselves, but not only that, it could be for the scientific community as well, because they would have a place to put the new data and the new things that they will be coming up with, because right now, at some point, they will even not be able to release them. That's the risk. The former data might disappear, but also the new one that should or could have been generated might never see the light. So, and it's for that purpose that we need to build that. So the next step will be to build this social capacity. As you see on this screen, there is no lead on this team. This team needs to be defined. I think we also need to define an architecture for coalition, not the coalition itself, but how coalition could be interconnected coalitions and the people within the coalition. And we'll need to at least maybe start with mapping who's who can be part of it, and then define it further down the road. So that might be an outcome of the discussion. Yes.
We are actually at time. I don't know if there's something essential. Otherwise, the
I was closing in here essentially. So
okay.
Yes, that's what I was saying is the next step will be, and that's why I wrote breakout room. So, but thank you to recall. The next step, the layer 3, will be to generate. I was talking about the individual solutions that we need to build, and then to scale up, but we'll need some sort of backbone, an overarching thing, and that's probably around the coalition. Jeffrey, I saw your end up for a second. You want to say a quick thing before we closing?
Yes. Again, I would like to bring up the example case study of Hungary, where when the transition from essentially an open society democracy to an authoritarian state, even George Soros' Open University, which was headquartered there, could not survive the authoritarian power surge to control all sources of knowledge and power. And that is, if you will, a small model of what may be happening in the United States today. So the question of mobilizing how to countervail that is crucial.
Absolutely. Thank you for this example. Yes, the Hungary one is a good example. So that's my last slide, Yanir. So I will be within a minute, even if we started a bit late.
No problem.
The objective is effectively in the assault on science discussion, it's not just discussing the assault on science. As I said, even the New York Times, even the Council of Foreign Affairs, I've already identified there is an assault on science on many fronts. So we know that it's not just, is it happening? It is happening. So what we need to build is countering that through structured systems. We need to build system, and we have 4 things to address, as mentioned earlier. And we've had a lot of examples in the last few minutes, so I will not rehearse and reiterate that. Just want to let you know that it was great exchanges that we had today, but I feel it's just a start. We definitely need to continue. This Inquisition will stay with us, and we need to build structure and systems that will survive to this Inquisition. It's an existential threat for, I would say, the scientific community as we know it. So it needs to be addressed, and it's not if it's happening, it's how we deal with it, and from now on. So thank you all.